So we're going to look at pivot and pivot tables in Pandas. If you ever use pivot tables in Excel, this should be very familiar with you. It's very similar to crosstabs, which you may have looked at already in Pandas. Pivot tables are very useful in Excel. You should learn them if you don't. Pivot and pivot tables in Pandas are even more useful than pivot tables in Excel. So let's start with pivot, not pivot tables, just pivot in Pandas. So we're going to look at the pivot.csv file. We're going to print out the data frame, and then we're going to describe the data frame. Sure enough, that is the entire data frame. It's only 8 records, and there's 4 columns. We got store, year, item, and sales. Notice that store 1 only sells item 101, and store 1, again, item 101. Then we have the sales for those items in each store. So very limited sale variety in the stores there. And of course, when we do describe, we get descriptive statistics for any numeric values, and even though year is listed as numeric value, we never really do descriptive statistics on the year. Then we look at pivot too. Again, this is pivot, not pivot table. So we do the same file here, and we do we're going to set the index to year, we'll do columns equal store and sales, and then we're going to flip those around, and we're going to do index is store and columns is year and value is sales. And then we're going to do index is year, columns is item, and then sales, and then item and year and sales. So we have year and store, store and year, and we have year and item and year. So we have 2 sets that we're going to flip each time around. So if we run these, you can see we have the total data frame here. Again, just to remind you, there's only 8 records, and then we do year by store. Notice this is not counts. There's not 24 rows here. There's only 8 rows, and if you look, we have 8 rows and we have 8 pieces of data here. Well, 8 pieces of data here. So we have year, and then the store number, and then the 8 pieces of data. This is not counts. This is the actual data. And then we do the same thing here, except we do store along the index value and for rows, and year for the columns. And then we do here, we do year, and we do the items, and we do the items and the year, and then we get the values inside, which are the sales. That's what we have as our values inside our command here. If we go to 3, then we do a pivot. Again, not pivot table. I sometimes flip and call it a pivot table when we're just doing pivots, because mostly I do pivot tables. And we do by store, so we do store, and then we do column and the value of sales, and this time we do store and year, but this time our value is item. And again, these are not counts. So we have our total data frame there, and then we do year by store, and then this is sales because that's our value, and then we do year by store, but we do items. So these are our items. Again, not counts. Those are just the items. If we go to number 4 and we try and make units sold here, and we do a sales region, we run this, and it blows up. And that is because the values in there, if we do that, we have to look at sales pivot. Sales pivot, as you can see, has a lot more data in it. And if we try and do this, units sold, we have more than one value of units sold for store number in a sales region. So we have, that blows up then, because we have more than one item. And that's really the difference, because again, we're not doing counts, we're doing actual items. And each cell has to have one individual item. So if we look at for A here, I've made a pivot 2 file, and it will demonstrate that a little bit closely. Again, we have, if we look at this one, you can see I have duplicate items here. So we have, all I've done is added 4 new rows here instead of 8, I have 12 rows, and all I've done is I have store 1, and I have a different year, but I have a different item. So when I try and do that, I get more than one item, so it blows up. So what do? We change to pivot tables. Pivot tables look just like crosstabs, but now when we run it, hey, it works. Because now we're not doing the individual items. Now we're doing some aggregate function. And the default aggregate function for pivot tables is not count as the default value for crosstabs is count. The default value for pivot tables is mean. So it's showing us the mean value here. So these are means for those regions. So the store numbers are all in the store number 1 through 3 are in the south, 4 and 5 are in the north, and 6, 7, and 8 are in the east. So these are the mean values for those regions based on that. So pivot tables are similar to crosstabs. Pivot is more just reorganizing of the data. All right, so similar to crosstabs, we can do an aggregate function. We can change it to sum, and we can do an aggregate function, or we can do a numpy mean here as well. And we're going to do set the index to a list, just as we did with the crosstabs. And when we run it, sure enough, they all work. So we do the file, we print just the data frame, then we do the sales, and this is the sum or count of the values, and here we do our means. And here we're doing the store number by sales region, and here we're doing sales region by store number, and you can see I flipped them here. So it's store number by sales region, and this is sales region by store number. The values are, so we have, you can see this, the values of the cells are going to change because the store number has changed. If you look down here, store 1 is 22.333, and that's the same value up here. It's just in a different location because I've sorted it differently based on the order of the sorts here. If we go to pivot 7, we can see we're going to use the we're going to read in green.csv. Green.csv has about 80,000 records of taxi data from Manhattan for I think it's 1 month. And here we do the same thing. We're doing vendor ID, passenger count, and we're going to do the fare amount, and we're going to do the mean. So for vendor 1, if they have 0 passengers, the mean fare was $8.65. You can use taxis to deliver lost luggage and things like that as well. They have 1 person, the mean value is 10. The mean value for 1 person for vendor 2 was a little bit more. It looks like vendor 2 is a little bit more expensive than vendor 1. But vendor 1 looks like they do not have a lot of space in their cabs for bigger number of people. So this is how you do pivots and pivot tables in Pandas, and as you can see, it's very similar to doing crosstabs.